Piper, part of the Community Economic and Social Development Department at Algoma University. I'm here today as an uninvited guest on these beautiful lands, otherwise known as Bawating, home of the Anishinaabe Nation. I'd like to present the Building Resilience Through Food Literacy video project to you today because food is such an important part of our identities, our language, our culture, our rituals, and the students have been lucky enough and excited to share their recipes and their traditional foods with you, in part as part of our understanding and vision of Chishimwok's idea of cross-cultural learning here at the university. Related to the importance of food, I'd also like to talk about this project in relation to Slow Food in Canada and Slow Food's motto of good, clean, and fair, that our foods are good for us spiritually, culturally, nutritionally, that they are clean, so we grow them in ways that are ecologically and environmentally sound, and in ways that are fair, so they are just in terms of economic, cultural, and environmental justice. I'd like to also take a minute to thank everybody who has been involved and supportive in this project. Thank you to Algoma University's Communications and Marketing Department, to the International Affairs and Experiential Learning Department, to our partners in the Lake Superior Living Lab Network, and our partners at Savonia University of Applied Science in Finland, who are part of the U-Arctic network that we're involved in. The students are so excited to share their videos and their cultural knowledge with you. I hope you enjoy them.
Ani Bojo, Hannah Morningstar Indigenous Cause, Nuk Main Indigo, Omuch Koshin Dodam, Nishnabe Querendel, Tikmixing and Donjiba. Hi everyone, my name is Hannah Morningstar. I'm from Tikmixing and Anishinaabe, which is a small reserve located on the north shore of Lake Huron. I'm currently a second-year biology student studying here at Algoma University, and I was asked to do this project with Jordan and Makayla, and just asked to do a little bit about the cultural significance of wild rice and our berries and maple syrup.
Manoomin, or wild rice, was a gift given to the Anishinaabe from the Creator, and it is a centerpiece of nutrition and sustenance for our communities. In some of our earliest stories of Anishinaabe history, there is reference to wild rice, and it was known as the food which grows upon the water or on top of the water. And our ancestors were told to find, and we would know when to end our travels and our migration west once we found it. And it is this profound and historic relationship which is remembered in the wild rice harvest and with our people, and the relationship between the wild rice and our people. And it is a food which is uniquely ours, and it is a food which is used in our daily lives, our ceremonies, and our feasts.
Hi everyone, my name is Makayla. I'm a second-year community development student at Algoma University. I'm currently working on the Building Food Resiliency project with other groups that you'll be seeing. I myself am working with Hannah and Jordan. We are building wild rice, we made wild rice and berry salad. As you will see in further videos on the how-to steps of building it, it took our group a couple of meetings to decide on what we wanted to make. We were going to do European culture dish, or we were going to do an Indigenous Aboriginal dish. We decided to go with something that was a challenge to myself personally. It was a great experience working with Jordan and Hannah, as they both have a lot of knowledge about the Aboriginal background and Indigenous background, especially with being between here in Sault Ste. Marie, Batchewana going as far as Manitoulin Island. As you'll see coming up in the video, we will go through the ingredients, specifically in the video on how to make it. I personally want to add in my grocery store haul to be able to figure out where to get the ingredients. I went to a couple grocery stores locally, got some prices, did the pricing out on each item. As you'll see in my report that I share with you in some videos coming up of pictures of the prices of the items that we use. So I myself personally made the dish separate aside from the rest of the group, just using generic stuff that I thought might substitute. Personally, using normal wild rice was the best thing that you could do with the dish. So as I was saying in the introduction video, when it came to our group making the decision and we thought about other cultural dishes that were relevant to the Indigenous and Aboriginal background, the wild rice was something that was different and unique, and a lot of the items that we use within we can get around the Sault Ste. Marie area, which is where Algoma University is located to when I personally made it with, it was brown rice and wild rice mixed together. The flavor was good, but it wasn't as good as the long grain because I found with the long grain wild rice, it actually absorbed the flavor of the berries and the maple syrup that were used within the video. For added stuff, I did add personal nuts of your choice that you can use. Almonds, pecans, cashews were the optional nuts that I was provided in the recipe. I personally found that it gave that extra crunch and that extra fill to eat it, and it's actually a really good dish or a really good snack. So hopefully you guys enjoy our video and our history piece coming up, and enjoy. Thank you.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the history of the ingredients in which we used in our dish. The first ingredient was rice. There are many different varieties of rice that can be named. The original origin of wild rice was found in northeastern Minnesota, and that yam was called Zizania aquatica, and that is the taxonomic classified name for wild rice. The wild rice grows from a seed around lakes or streams after ice has moved out, usually in the spring, and it is usually in the lower shallow water in softer bottom areas. Wild rice grows to the top of the water level usually in June and lays flat and floating. It looks kind of like a leaf at this stage. Water fluctuations in level can damage and affect the growth of rice. In July is when you really see rice grow to be 6 feet tall. Each rice plant is unisexual, containing male spikelets below the female spikelets, which are located at the end of the stalk. Cross-pollination occurs naturally in rice beds, usually in late July, and rice kernels begin to fill with a milky substance in late July to early August. These kernels harden to become the seed or grain of the plant. Eventually in the fall, the rice becomes hard kernels if it does not land in the water, and they sink to the bottom until growth seasons return. With rice being able to go dormant, it is able to survive for many years in the bottom of the water beds. Wild rice is ripe when the seeds are formed and ready to fall off. It is during this time that harvest can occur. Different lakes, rivers, and areas of the same lake and river, and even different seeds on the same plant ripen at different times. So due to this varied ripening, the same wild rice bed can be harvested several times in the same year. Depending on conditions, wild rice is typically not ripe and ready for harvest until late August or early September. And a little bit on blueberries that we used in our dish. So the blueberry plant has been around for about 13,000 years. It has been recorded that they were not always known as blueberries. It's to be thought about by animals actually knowing what a blueberry was even before humans, because of it was being a wild plant, and some animals like a bear or a cow would graze to eat out of hunger. Blueberries are known to grow in many places. However, they are native to North America. Furthermore, on berries, we also used raspberries in our dish, and raspberries originated in Europe before eventually coming to North America. They have been eaten fresh for thousands of years while having a history of medicinal uses. Today, raspberry fruits are harvested by hand and eaten fresh. World raspberry production usually takes place mostly in Eastern Europe and in Russia. Raspberries have always been valued for their rich taste and sweet value. The raspberry family is made up of black raspberries and red raspberries. The red raspberry is assumed to have been brought to North America by prehistoric people who crossed the Bering Strait. The next berry in our dish was strawberries. So it was not long ago that strawberries production was in a commercial setting. Two Roman poets mentioned strawberries back in the 1st century AD, but it was referred to as a decoration rather than a food. Strawberries have only been eaten by humans in small quantities until recent centuries. In the 1300s, the strawberry was cultivated in Europe and then then it was moved from the woods, so from nature and the wilderness, into the gardens of certain people. And towards the end of the 1500s, the strawberry was also being cultivated from nature, as well as increasing in growth in gardens. The next ingredient in our dish was a hint of cinnamon, and cinnamon had been known to be highly prized among ancient nations, to be a gift and to be used in many medicinal ways. Cinnamon was imported from Egypt, from China in the early 2000 BCE. It was ordered from Moses to produce a holy anoint, and that was used to perfume a lover's bed. Cinnamon was originally native to Ceylon, Sri Lanka. And for the last ingredient was maple syrup. So maple syrup was known and highly valued by indigenous people of the eastern woodlands long before the arrival of European settlers. Tradition tells of the puncturing the bark of maple and the use of its sweet culinary technique of maple cured meats. Maple curing was a food preservation method practiced by the Anishinaabe that allowed communities to keep food stores for winter months when food was scarce. The Anishinaabe called the sugaring off period, when the sap was collected, the maple moon, or the sugar month. The traditional ways of sugaring became established in communities in the forests of North America and have been passed down in practices by generations. Different techniques have been used by indigenous peoples when tapped trees by cutting V-shaped patterns into the bark and then inserting tubes into the tree. Bark bowls were placed beneath the tap to catch the watery sap in early spring, when the sap was made into syrup using different methods. Some individuals boil the sap down to syrup by adding hot rocks to birch bark, pots, or boiled the sap in clay or metal kettles over the fire. So that concludes the history of all of our ingredients. I hope you enjoyed it, and now we will go on to how to cook this dish. So thank you very much for listening.
Okay, so the water doesn't actually have to be boiling for the rice to be put in it. It's better if you can actually soak wild rice overnight, but it's okay if you can just cook it like this, that's fine. The only thing is it'll take longer to split open. You'll see it takes about 40 minutes to an hour, so we're just gonna put that in there.
Voila. Okay, there we go.
So I'm just stirring it right now to make sure the rice doesn't burn or stick to the bottom of the pot. You can already kind of smell. It smells like. Of course, you can't smell it. Yeah.
It does smell very good, though.
Now, does by covering it help cook it faster, or is that still if you're just used to having like an open pot? Yeah, just because I'm usually like stirring. Okay. But we can try covering.
This is the rice at about 30 minutes in.
So the rice is pretty much done now. You can see all of the pieces are pretty much split. We're just maxing out on water here, but it's good because the rice is done. And I'm just gonna strain it to get rid of any excess water. If your rice needs to split a little bit more though, you could always add more water. But we're good. Well, right now, so I'm just gonna strain it. So right now, we're just straining the rice. And it's gonna give a little bit of rice. method where it's just kind of helps wash away all the nutrients stuff and like especially a little bit of starch to it. See on the bottom, like after I was stirring it, yeah. And that's why like, as you're cooking, you can add water as you need it. In the dish, Hannah introduced us to there being raspberries, blueberries, and strawberries is what we use for the dish. We use a combination of long grain and wild rice. Hannah provided full bag of wild rice, as you can see later in the video, like cooking and going through. We also have cinnamon and maple syrup. There's also the option of nuts. We chose not to do nuts, but each of the berries is something that was located within the region of what people use to add to the dish. The nuts were just kind of like an alternative for a crunch or flavor. Cinnamon was added just to kind of give a little bit of extra flavor, and syrup was the main ingredient to give that sweet flavor to the dish with the rice. We wash out the blueberries and the raspberries and the strawberry. Make sure we give them a good rinse so there's nothing left on them. Your mixture, pop it in the bowl. We're gonna cut up the strawberries. This is huge. So I was cutting up the strawberries in a minute. I was talking to Hannah and asking her about the tops of the strawberries, what they do with them. And she was sharing that they don't waste. They usually put them back in the bush if they're not eating them as a snack, because I actually learned that you can eat the tops of strawberries. Sit for now. So now we're just adding in the berries to the rice. It's a bit more than half, but that's okay. Then I'm just gonna mix it.
Mix it in.
And you can have as little as much as berries as you want. It's basically at your preference, right? Mm-hmm. It's pretty berry-ish right now. But a little bit more because the berries are looking good. Really fine berry.
Hannah, when you've cooked this in the past, are you able to put it off into containers and put it in the fridge for later in a couple days, or can you freeze it?
So it's better if you can eat this right away, or if you're gonna put it in the fridge, it's better if you can like add the strawberries like after, so it doesn't get all smushy. And then the same thing with the syrup. Okay. You just add it after so it doesn't get all it's like soggy, I guess.
Okay.
But it'll hold like this overnight pretty good.
Okay, so you can make it like as a preparation for the next day type thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just add syrup the next day. The only thing is the syrup is that we'll make it soggy like that, so. Okay, so we get the syrup in now.
How much syrup?
That's also your own preference.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And some people want it sweeter. I'll just go for it right now. That should probably be good enough because the berries are already sweet enough. And then what's it called? There's already like lots of flavor in the wild rice. So now sprinkle. This is just like an optional step. You can just keep it super simple, just your syrup, berries, and rice. If you want to jazz it up a little bit, just a little sprinkle. Cinnamon.
And is this also where you could add the nuts if you choose to do so to make it more fancy and show it up a little bit?
I know some people will mix this too with like arugula and make it like a really fancy salad. So this is just kind of the original simple way.
The traditional way of how you guys made it with like the berries and the rice that was arranged and the syrup that you guys made.
Alright, and that's how you make strawberries and berries.
Do you put it in the fridge or do you eat it warm?
I could eat it just straight up like this. Like you could put it in the fridge for a little bit if you want. I know some people prefer it like colder, especially if you're eating it in the summer. It's a good, nice light dish. You don't feel heavy. It's good for you. We got like natural sugars with the maple syrup, so